certainly can't explain how it happened overnight, but I'm pretty sure it can't be done by either man or machine or any kind of animal.
A strange phenomenon has been going on across southern England. For decades now, there has been reports of strange circles that keep appearing in cornfields in the countryside. These unusual events have baffled farmers, scientists, and sky watchers for so long as to what was really responsible for these mysterious sightings. Some believe it's just an elaborate ruse designed by some group of pranksters. Others feel there is something supernatural going on. But something happened recently that finally explains the mystery. It was completely beyond anyone's imagination. What happened that finally solved the mystery? Let's find out. The crop circle mystery. The mysterious circles appearing on crop field has been going on for centuries. In fact, many who haven't seen these circles, them usually believe they're just fable legend, but in recent decades, they've grown more precise, more intricate, and far harder to explain. As a result, more people are now talking about them, and there are more videos recording of these phenomena online. They're not just random shapes stamped into the ground. Some of them display mathematical patterns so advanced that even modern technology struggles to recreate them. And the strangest part lies in how they appear. They seem to arrive in complete silence, often overnight, with no footprints of tire marks or any trace of human activity. But something happened recently that pushed this mystery into dangerous new territory. It changed everything we previously knew about the weird circles. You won't believe how it all played out. It all began with a shocking leak from a European defense contractor. It allegedly contains an exclusive footage of crop circles forming in real time. The evidence is said to be so compelling that it threatens to overturn everything we thought we knew about the phenomenon. The first time the mystery of crop circles seemed to have met its end was with an explanation that circulated in 1991. That year, two ordinary Englishmen, Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley, became famous with an explanation they gave that seemed to make sense. They held many interviews and roadshows where they confidently explained that the phenomenon baffling the world for over a decade was nothing more than their late-night mischief. They described how they had used wooden planks, ropes, and a measuring string to create the circles. According to the demonstrations they gave, they would step on the board, press down, move forward, thereby flattening the wheat. Everyone listened and watched in shock. They could hardly believe the sensational mystery the entire country had been baffling over was just the handwork of two mischievous people. Nevertheless, the case was eventually laid to rest, and the world moved on. But the story wasn't as tidy as it first appeared. True, Bauer and Chorley had been responsible for the basic shapes, but they couldn't explain or replicate the more elaborate formations that had appeared across England's countryside. Evidently, they weren't responsible for all of the shapes observed in the cornfields. These were spirals stretching hundreds of feet, intricate geometric mandalas, and patterns with near-perfect symmetry. They weren't the kinds of designs two men with planks could whip up in the dead of night. There was another factor they should be considered: the timing. Some of the most complex formations had appeared in fields under surveillance, where watchers reported no human activity. Neither were there any recordings on the surveillance tapes. Yet by morning, the designs were there, immense, flawless, and eerie in their precision. Even the geometry itself raised questions. They were advanced formations that displayed mathematical accuracy that left researchers unsettled. The angles, proportions, and alignments all matched concepts found in sacred geometry, astronomy, and even quantum physics. Was it truly plausible that two random men working by torchlight had achieved what looked like architectural blueprints drawn across the Earth? That was hard to believe. Still, there weren't any other leads to follow, so the public had to accept their confession. It was a neat explanation that brought an end to the riddle. But the mystery, far from solved, had only deepened, And for some serious investigators, the missing details created cracks in the story that were simply too wide to ignore. One of such investigators was biophysicist Dr. William Levengood. He was a researcher who approached the mystery with a microscope instead of a camera crew. He eventually made a discovery that changed everything. By the early 1990s, the media had largely dismissed crop circles as nothing more than elaborate hoaxes. But Dr. Levengood kept doing serious research, and he soon uncovered a vital detail that just didn't fit into the two men with planks narrative. What he found deep inside the crops themselves would ignite decades of debate. His approach was to examine the very anatomy of the plants from affected fields. What he discovered was striking. The stems weren't broken or crushed, as you'd expect if someone had simply stomped them flat. Instead, their nodes, that is, the knuckle-like joints, were bent and elongated. It was as if some invisible heat had softened them first before rehardening them into their new position. Even more curious, some nodes contain something that looks like tiny expulsion cavities, as though moisture inside the stems had been instantly vaporized, bursting outward without burning the plant. It resembled rapid dehydration, almost like exposure to microwave radiation, but without the scorching that should have come with it. The oddities didn't stop there. Seeds taken from within these formations sometimes germinated differently from seeds in untouched areas. Some sprouted faster while others showed stunted growth. This difference suggests that the plants had been subjected to an unusual energy process. The soil samples were equally puzzling. Under the microscope, Dr. Levengood found microscopic magnetic spheres, scattered as if deposited by some powerful electromagnetic event. These findings triggered various theories. Some felt many of the results had somehow been contaminated, or Dr. Levengood's methods were somewhat flawed. But there were others who believed Dr. Levengood's work hinted at something profound. That these circles might not be carved with ropes and boards, but with an unknown form of energy. The idea was unsettling. It led to a question that had no answer. If energy fields could shape crops without scorching them, what kind of technology or force could do that? But the answer didn't remain unknown for long. In the summer of 1990, the mystery of crop circles had reached such a fever pitch that the British government could no longer ignore it. There was relentless pressure to once and for all prove what was happening in the fields of southern England. And so they set up a project called Operation Blackbird. It was a surveillance project launched with the help of prominent researcher Colin Andrews. The idea was to set up high-tech monitoring in the very regions where circles were appearing and catch the phenomenon as it happened. The chosen site was outfitted with floodlights, night vision, and round-the-clock cameras for days. But nothing happened. The mysterious circles didn't appear not even once while the operation was underway. Once again, the media pronounced the whole idea of shapes in cornfields a hoax. To many, it looked like the entire phenomenon had collapsed under scrutiny. But the story was not that simple. There were still some troubling inconsistencies emerging. Military exercises were reported in the same vicinity during the operation, leading some to question whether the event had been manipulated or suppressed. But that's not all. Colin Andrews later revealed that an unidentified man approached him with an offer of money if he would walk away from crop circle research entirely. Around the same time, he began receiving anonymous calls, noticed surveillance, and even felt directly threatened. All these details painted a very different picture. It raised a lot of concerning questions. If crop circles were really just pranks, why would there be government-level interest, intimidation, or secrecy? In fact, Colin Andrews made a comment that suggested that he felt the Operation Blackbird was less like an honest investigation and more like a carefully managed failure. Like an attempt to publicly dismiss the phenomenon while concealing deeper truths. The real story behind this mystery dates back to the first time it was observed. You would be shocked by what we're about to unveil. The first sightings of the mysterious shapes. It was supposed to be just another morning in the English countryside. Farmers awoke to the sight of their fields bent into strange, almost impossibly neat shapes. Wheat and barley that had stood tall the evening before now lay press-flat against the earth, forming circles so clean and symmetrical that they looked as though they had been traced by some unseen compass in the sky. The first thought was whether this could have been caused by animals. But no, the geometry was precise to be dismissed as animals bedding down or the result of winds. The stalks weren't broken or crushed under heavy weight. Instead, they were bent at the base, as though softened by a sudden burst of heat or energy. Just like in modern times, there were no footprints leading in or out of the formations. Neither were there sign of machinery nor tools abandoned in haste. The fields were undisturbed except for the circles themselves, as though the patterns had materialized overnight without human interference. In rural England, skepticism clashed with a growing sense of wonder. What began as a handful of circles in the 1970s and early 1980s would, within a decade, explode into one of the most debated mysteries of modern times. It gets more interesting. By the mid-1980s, what had begun as a handful of mysterious circles quietly puzzling rural farmers turned into a cultural storm. Each summer seemed to bring fresh reports of increasingly elaborate designs etched overnight into the wheat and barley fields of southern England. Nowhere was this explosion more concentrated than in Wiltshire. One thing about Wiltshire was that the small county was already steeped in mystique. It was home to Stonehenge-Bont, Silbury Hill, and Avebury's ancient stone circles. To many, the coincidence was too uncanny to ignore. Why would this surge of patterns appear in the very landscape already considered sacred ground? Aerial photographs captured during this period revealed just how far the phenomenon had evolved. Gone were the simple rings and arcs of the early years. Instead, farmers and astonished pilots reported sprawling pictograms, interlocking circles, spirals, and geometric forms so vast they could only be appreciated from above. Some appeared as mandalas, others as star maps, and still others as shapes eerily reminiscent of sacred geometry. What startled observers most was not only the complexity, but the precision. As news spread, theories blossomed almost as quickly as the circles themselves. Meteorological explanations were among the first offered. They said maybe it was plasma vortices, unusual wind patterns, or freak lightning strikes that might somehow press plants into circular shapes. Others looked toward more exotic answers, suggesting secret military experiments with microwave weapons or even satellite-based technologies. Inevitably, the idea of extraterrestrial involvement took root, fed by decades of UFO lore. Maybe these circles' landing pads, coded messages, or cosmic graffiti left for humankind to ponder. The media seized the phenomenon with relish. Local newspapers ran front-page spreads, while international outlets dispatched crews to film the formations from helicopters and drones. Television specials framed crop circles as the latest unsolved mystery, a modern-day Roswell playing out in the English countryside. By the early 1990s, Wiltshire's fields had become something of a seasonal attraction, drawing busloads of tourists, photographers, and self-styled researchers hoping to witness a fresh formation. What had once been regarded as a minor rural curiosity had now erupted into a worldwide fascination. Whether dismissed as elaborate pranks, celebrated as cosmic communication, or pondered as a new frontier of science, crop circles in this era became more than flattened fields of grain. They became symbols of mystery, of human imagination, and perhaps of something reaching far beyond. But there's more. One of the most fascinating aspects of the crop circle mystery is where they appear. Many formations seem to align with ancient ley lines. These were imaginary straight paths said to connect sacred sites across the landscape. First popularized in the early 20th century, ley lines are believed by some to represent like an invisible energy grid running through the earth. And in southern England, the connection feels almost deliberate. The crop circles would often emerge near Stonehenge, the ancient stone circle aligned with the solstices or Avebury, which was home to one of the world's largest Stonehenge monuments, or Silbury Hill, Europe's tallest prehistoric man-made mound. Even Glastonbury, steeped in myth and legend, has reported circles forming nearby. These areas have been associated with ritual, astronomy, and sacred geometry for thousands of years. The pattern doesn't stop in Britain. Around the world, mysterious sites align in similar ways. The Nazca lines in Peru, massive geoglyphs only fully visible from the sky, still baffle researchers. The pyramids of Giza are laid out with astronomical precision. High in the Andes, Machu Picchu seems to fit into the same global network of ancient sites. When crop circles appear along these ancient alignments, some see it as evidence that they are part of a much larger mystery linking past and present. This went on for decades, with crop circles dancing between mystery and myth. Skeptics point out, with good reason, that many designs have been confessed hoaxes born from planks, ropes, and midnight mischief. But that lingering 1% resists explanation. The circles showing microwave-like effects on plants, magnetic spheres embedded in soil, or designs based on fractal geometry that require advanced mathematical insight. These cannot be brushed aside so easily. They don't fit the pattern of pranksters at play. They raise unsettling questions. Some believe we are witnessing attempts at communication, encoded in universal symbols like geometry and mathematics, the language of the cosmos. Others suggest a natural phenomenon, some atmospheric or geophysical process, yet unknown to science, leaving its fingerprint on the fields. And then there are those who whisper of black projects, classified technologies tested under cover of darkness, with misinformation campaigns deployed to keep the public guessing. Layered between fact and fabrication, the mystery endures. Perhaps that is the most powerful truth of all, that crop circles have become a mirror reflecting humanity's curiosity, fear, and imagination. They force us to look skyward and inward and ask questions like, if not us, then who? Do you think these patterns are nothing more than an elaborate prank spun out of control, a secret experiment hidden in plain sight, or signs of something far greater than ourselves? Proof that we are not alone? Before now, have you heard of the crop circles mystery? We would love you to share your opinion in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.